Yo, it's Dohrok here. Today we gotta talk about the frog. Is the frog doing his job? What was the frog's job? Is it worth it to buy the frog? What's all the deal with this frog, dude? So while I think that most people have an answer in mind already, let's look at a small subset of numbers from my own personal experience. I opened all of the gamble chests on both of my accounts to note what I got from it. And this might be kind of hard to read initially, but essentially after spending 360,000 gold on gambles from the frog, I received one extra random relic and grieving pouch, about 116,000 gold worth of valuable items, and a bunch of trash. And I'm going to note that I didn't put cards or card experience into a valuable item for me, but all of the prices that I based it around were going to be on current market value or Mari's prices. And I bought the 2 random relic pouches on both my accounts as well. So in total, I got 5 random relic engraving pouches. And from those, I got a Necromancy, Master of Escape, Crisis Evasion, Supercharge, and a Grudge Book. And I think that most people would consider that to be pretty lucky. However, doing the math, since I had to buy the chest on both of my accounts after selling the Grudge Book, the Supercharge Book, and if I include the value of the items that I actually care about, I would have made 52,546 gold profit. Just the raw gold value, I lost 64,000 gold. And since this would be considered lucky, if I had not pulled that Grudge Book, like most people won't, then I would have lost 243,454 gold. And Grudge is the second most expensive book on the market. If I had pulled a Raid Captain, Cursed Doll, Ambush Master, Hitmaster, or any of the big engravings that aren't Adrenaline or Grudge, I would have still lost between 10,000 and 240,000 gold. So what does it take to go positive with the frog? Well, you would need some insane luck, and I think everyone already knew that. But I don't think anyone was even really prepared for just how bad it was going to be before they announced the prices. I said personally in my last video that I thought the frog would at least bring a small temporary increase in supply. However, pretty much everyone has realized that the value in the frog isn't in gambling, it's just the relic engraving selector that you can buy after your initial gambling. The selector isn't tradable though. And if we look at my personal pulls again, if I had not bought the random books and instead bought the selector and used it on Adrenaline, then the value of my pulls from the frog would be about 246,000 gold, which would include about the 60,000 gold worth of mats, plus the value of an Adrenaline book. So if all of the value in the frog comes from the relic engraving selector, what was the point of the frog? And what did AGS hope would happen? Everyone can get one relic engraving selector that's non-tradable. And this is good for people that have ended up with 4 free relic books over time, where AGS has then offered the 5th one at a monetary value. And if you fall into that category of people that did not buy those packs to get the 5th one, and you haven't been able to afford your 5th one, then you can essentially get a 5th Adrenaline book and probably around 60k in mats for 180,000 gold. But that can only happen once for everyone. And for most of these people, it has already happened. So let's take a look at the market prices on books and mats to see if the frog is doing its job. And nope, this doesn't look too good for the frog. At the time of looking at the market here, looking at the 5-day average on the price of mats, the 5th day was Tuesday, so the day before reset. So we can see that on Tuesday, price dropped dramatically, and this was a result of people selling and causing a short-term price decrease that caused others to panic sell, thinking that everything was going to crash because of the frog. However, on Wednesday, the price went back up, and this is the day that the frog was introduced. This should have been the lowest that it got, because we'd be expecting to see a small supply increase as people got books from the frog. But the thing is that so few people got a relic book from the frog compared to how many people were willing to buy them at the cheaper panic sell prices, that the price increased even more because there was a larger demand and there was no supply increase. And I know that 120 chests is not a huge sample size, but it's not terrible to see somewhat of an idea of the weightings for the items that exist in the chest. And it appears that the random relic pouch from the frog is about a 1% chance. And if we take this 15,000 player peak on global and every single person bought their boxes, that would only introduce about 150 random relic books. And there's 43 different engravings. So if we're generous and we assume that the random pouch has equal weightings, there's only 5 books where you can almost make the value of the frog back with. That means that roughly 16 relic books that have value were introduced into the economy across all of global. This isn't even enough to complete a full engraving for one person. This isn't worth it for anyone, and everyone knows this. But this is a shockingly bad number because pretty much everyone is going to pass on buying these chests after getting their relic engraving selector. So the chance of any new books being introduced onto the market during the frog's event period is basically gone. So what was the frog's real job? Because I think the majority of people were hoping for a sudden hit of deflation that would cause prices to go down because people had less gold. And I believe I said that exact thing just can't happen, even before the frog was announced. Then AGS announced the frog, and if the frog's goal was to reduce inflation, then the frog is trying to accomplish that by essentially advertising a casino to a bunch of gambling addicts. And as it turns out, a large majority of people didn't get rich by playing slot machines. So who are you trying to remove the gold from? There's basically only one situation for nearly everybody to buy these chests from the frog. And that's if you feel like spending 180,000 gold on an adrenaline book and about 50,000 gold worth of mats is actually worth it. That's pretty much it. And you can twist that in a few ways monetarily, but ultimately, it's if the price of the relic selector is worth about 180,000 gold to you, then the frog isn't a bad deal to buy just that. But if you're even having to slightly consider it, then the frog is most likely not worth it to you. And since the relic engraving selector isn't tradable, it will have virtually no impact on the economy, as it's only removing the demand from one book from each player. I also want to say that not everyone is going to feel like 180,000 gold for an adrenaline book is worth it. We still have a large number of players that don't earn 180,000 gold a week, because they have characters in tier 3 still earning 10 to 15,000 gold a week. And that's all bound gold, because they have to do solo raids to do it. So the frog's job might have been to decrease inflation, but he's doing an amazing job at showcasing just how much a lot of the problems that I brought up recently are. And I want to really emphasize that if you don't really have a full roster in tier 4, there is basically no value to the frog at all to you. But a lot of people won't see that message until after they've already spent money on it. And this has without a doubt negatively impacted some newer players that weren't aware that a scam this bad would be introduced into the game. Most people can't afford the frog even if they wanted to throw away their life savings at it. People need to hone. There's people still spending gold on transcendence, elixirs, the karma system. You still need to spend gold on fions for ability stones. There's still so much shit that we need to spend gold on that pretty much every level-headed person is going to spend their gold on those things instead of gambling at all for a 2% chance and an 11% chance to break even. Do not get it twisted on this one. I can't emphasize enough how bad it is to gamble for this. Also, bear in mind that the 2 random relic pouches are a one-time buy per roster as well. So going forward, there's an absolute real possibility that no new good relic books will be pulled from the frog on any given week in all of global Lost Ark. And since people know this, they aren't buying the frog. And so there's going to be no impact on the economy. So this is unfortunate really, because there were also some changes announced to Korea, which right now seem to be apparently nerfing the materials gained from lower end raids as well as their gold. And I don't want to speculate too much on this, because I think it would be quite far out for something like global to get, but something like this should just absolutely never be a thing. There's no reason to nerf the materials gained from raids and the gold gain, I understand that 1640 is too profitable. Trust me, I've raided a few 1640 characters myself for extra cash, but this is still a barrier for entry for newer players, and you have to address those players in some way. And I've had some people tell me that myself and people like me are the reason that these hurdles get put into the game, which I think there's a system in the game designed to recognize new and returning players. I've worked in software and IT related positions in the past. I know computers and I know programming logic pretty well. There's nothing stopping them from expanding on this system. A huge amount of information about characters and player accounts is tracked regularly. You could easily nerf gold for accounts that have cleared the raid over a certain number of times, or has regularly played a certain amount of time in the dungeon, or base it on the highest item level achieved on the account. There are a lot of ways that they could handle changes like this that don't affect the people that actually need the gold at that point. And they need to be doing something like this sooner than later, because the current Mokoko Bootcamp has highlighted a few more issues for people. Like how there are people that started playing or came back during the previous Mokoko Bootcamp, and when they returned during that event, they had the leaf. And people wanted to bring those people to raids to get the tokens. And generally there was a pretty positive experience for a lot of those new and returning players getting back into raids. It was a lot easier for them. But then that event ended, and there was absolutely no chance that a new account had a full roster in tier 4 at the end of it. And from the people that I've talked to, almost all of them have been struggling to find groups now because they don't have a leaf. Those people haven't cleared Theamine 10 times or Echidna 10 times, but they lost their leaf. Now they can't find groups because the only requirement for getting the leaf was a new account or you haven't logged in for 30 days. And I personally know several members in my community over at twitch.tv/DJ Dohrok that quit because they can't find groups anymore. And I always offer to help people complete raids, but obviously I'm one person trying to help a lot more. And not everyone can raid at the exact same times that I do, so obviously these people still try to find groups on their own, and they can't. Why is the Mokoko Bootcamp a timed event anyways? This should just be a permanent addition, and the leaf requirement should be based on the raid that they're doing. It doesn't make sense for someone who started playing during the last event, they get a character to 1660 at the end of it, and then they lost their leaf. So they get gatekept out of A gear for having no pieces, and then the exact same event is added again. And now it's extended through A gear, but that person no longer has their leaf because they've been playing the game. But they get gatekept out of A gear still. This needs to be fixed. Like before the idea was even conceptualized, this should have been thought of. And the current event shop is already bought out by a lot of people, if not pretty much everyone at this point. I think we can appreciate getting more tokens this time around, but the biggest problem with the last Mokoko Bootcamp and how many tokens that we were getting was the 1200 token price tag on the Relic Engraving Selector. And since we didn't get that this time around, the most expensive thing to work towards was the title for 150. And that really only took a couple of raids to get. I know myself, and I'm sure lots of other people, are sitting on enough excess expert tokens at this point to buy the weekly rewards on reset and not care about the event. And a lot of people have expressed that there isn't enough incentive to help new players anymore, and that it's actually more of a hindrance for a lot of people because they have a limited amount of time and they need to clear so much stuff. And I think it's fair for people to prioritize themselves in that situation, and ideally it would be nice if more people were willing to help more new players. But realistically, the game puts a strain on people to a point where they feel like helping is counterproductive, when it should be fun, because it's a video game. A lot of people aren't having fun helping new players wipe on raids for long periods of time when they still have to do 3 hard mode brels, and they feel required to do those or they're going to be behind on their karma system and their gold income. AGS could easily make the event more fun by making the reward incentive actually rewarding, or more fun. They could combine the Frog and the Mokoko Bootcamp into one event, and instead of spending 180,000 gold on Frog chest, you spend some amount of expert tokens or Mokoko tokens to buy the lucky chest. I think that a title is a reward idea, and that's what they're doing. But if it's the only reward, then most people don't care. And a lot of people just want the 10k gold, the rest bonus pots, and the mats on the weekly reset. So make an RNG box that you can buy with leftover tokens that has a chance to contain some of the things that people actually want. And you could even have separate boxes for Mokokos and experts to give more stuff to Mokokos. And yes, I think there should still be a shit chance at a relic engraving book from one of those chests. Add supply of these things without making the players spend more money. We're already broke. And please, just make the Mokoko incentives permanent. Why do they need to be locked between a limited time event? They could also potentially implement a recruit a friend system like WoW has, but instead of getting rewards based on them buying game time, people can get rewards for completing raids with their friends and helping them out in game. Add incentive for people to want to introduce new people into the game. And this isn't something that we can just blame Smilegate for and say Smilegate doesn't care about global. These are things introduced by AGS. There's no way that they can't change this. I can understand some design decisions not being swayed by AGS, but this stuff was introduced by them. They have the ability to change this. And there's still so much more stuff that I want to discuss. And I want you guys to tell me your experience with the frog. Do your numbers kind of match up with my numbers? Or were you insanely lucky? What are some design choices that AGS can realistically improve on in the short term to help keep people playing the game? And I know that I'm going to continue buying the Gamble Frog so that I can just document down exactly how bad it is. But let me know down in the comments below. But until next one, dudes. Peace.